The new MacBook Air M2 2022 comes with the M2 System-on-Chip (SoC), Apple's second-generation 5nm chip that the company claims will offer an 18% faster CPU, 35% faster GPU, now 10 cores, and a 40% faster neural engine than its predecessor. It's worth noting that the base system of the MacBook Air ships with an 8-core GPU, but you can upgrade to a 10-core GPU. Meanwhile, the MacBook Pro 13-inch base model comes with an M2 chip and 10-core GPU as standard for not much more. During our time with the MacBook Air, the laptop performed incredibly well. The pre-installed macOS Monterey boots quickly and runs well, while also looking fantastic on the new screen. As usual, we used the MacBook Air M2 2022 for day-to-day use. Browsing the web in both Safari and Chrome was fast and responsive. Even with multiple tabs open, the model we have on test comes with 16 GB of unified memory, which certainly helps here, and typing up documents on the slightly redesigned keyboard, which is slightly narrower due to the redesign, but keeps the same Magic Keyboard switches, feels nice and comfortable. Since the launch of the M1 chip, an increasing number of applications have released M1-compatible apps, which also work with the M2, and that means your favorite apps should run brilliantly and take advantage of the M2's capabilities. Not just Apple apps, either, but applications from the likes of Adobe and Microsoft have M1 and M2 native versions. For those that don't, Apple's Rosetta 2 tool once again helps here, allowing you to run apps made for Intel-based Macs almost as if they were designed for M2, with minimum impact to performance. We also played around with GarageBand, Apple's music-making software that comes pre-installed, and edited 4K home movies in iMovie, and again, the improved performance of the M2 chip kept everything running extremely well. We'd even go so far as to say that we didn't notice any perceptible difference to the M2 MacBook Pro when using it for similar tasks. One difference Apple likes to point out is that the MacBook Air has a fanless design, while the MacBook Pro 13-inch uses fans to keep its components cool. This should mean that the MacBook Pro 13-inch is better at sustained performance. It can work at full pelt for longer without overheating. In practice, it means the MacBook Air M2 2022 is thin and light, and also completely silent when in use. However, we found that the MacBook Pro 13-inch's fans rarely, if ever, kicked in, which suggests that it'll only make a difference for seriously heavy workloads. Think Logic Pro projects with hundreds of tracks, or 8K video editing in Premiere Pro, and you wouldn't really buy the MacBook Air, or the MacBook Pro 13-inch for that matter, for those kind of demands. You'd be better off getting the more powerful MacBook Pro 14-inch or 16-inch. Our benchmark tests again showed how similar the new MacBook Air and MacBook Pro 13-inch are when it comes to performance. Single-core performance in both Cinebench and Geekbench were almost identical for the two devices, which makes sense as they both use the same 8-core M2 processor. Multi-core performance was also very similar in Geekbench, but in Cinebench, the 13-inch MacBook Pro had a slight edge. So you may get a bit better performance when multitasking with the Pro, especially if some of those tasks are graphics-based, but otherwise performance is so similar, it's hard to recommend the Pro over the MacBook Air, considering the Air has a new design, bigger screen and is cheaper. So, we're in a very odd situation. It looks like the MacBook Pro 13-inch wasn't killed off by a competitor like Dell or HP, but by Apple's own MacBook Air. We had high hopes for the MacBook Air's battery life, as the M1 chip was an extremely efficient chip that offered both high performance and long battery life, and Apple has promised the same with the M2 chip. Our hopes weren't dashed, with our battery life benchmark, where we run a 1080p looped video until the battery dies, lasting a huge 16 hours, which is seriously impressive, and far outstrips Windows-based laptops of around the same price tag. It actually lasted 30 minutes longer than the MacBook Pro 13-inch, which is surprising, as the Pro has a larger battery. The touch bar of the Pro, and a less energy-efficient screen, may explain the faster battery drain on the Pro. It's also a substantial increase over the M1 MacBook Air from 2 years ago, which managed 11 hours in the same test. This means you can easily use the MacBook Air M2 2022 throughout an entire workday, or on a long flight, and still have battery life left, which is seriously impressive stuff. We found that we were able to work easily without needing to think about where to plug the MacBook Air in to top up the battery, which gives you so much more freedom when using this laptop. We had the more powerful charger, and it did indeed fill up the battery quickly when we did need a charge. The MagSafe port is also great, allowing you to easily plug the charger in quickly, thanks to the magnetic connection, and if it accidentally gets pulled out, which actually happened to us while we were reviewing, it disconnects easily without any danger of damaging the port. You can also charge the MacBook Air M2 2022 via the USB-C port, which is handy if you need to borrow a charger when you're out and about.